Amazing Spider-Man is in the DorkLair! Welcome to another DorkLair action figure review. Today I'm taking a look at the MAFEX Comic version Spider-Man, released in February of 2019. This figure took quite a while to come out. MAFEX is right up there with Medicom when it comes to length of wait for pre-orders. This thing, I think, it was almost a year ago. It was like springtime, maybe April-ish of 2018 when it went up for pre-order. And so the wait was quite a bit. But I will say that it was worth the wait. This figure is awesome. It's expensive. I think it's overpriced, quite frankly. But it's ignoring the price. This is a really, really good figure with awesome articulation. Slightly weaker paint applications, especially in the weathering and the shadowing. But overall, it's a great looking figure with lots of accessories. Really neat, fun thing to play with. So let's get into it. Taking a look at the packaging. This is kind of like a comic book cover. It's got like the comic book thing on the side there. And it's got a neat little cityscape in the backdrop. I'm not usually a huge fan of the MAFEX boxes. Not that I have a lot of these figures, but this one's decent. They're kind of large for what they are, but, you know, I collect Medicom, so I can't really talk much about large packaging. You can see the side and the back. Some, you know, product shots, promo shots. Got a sideways thing here. On the top is Amazing Spider-Man logo, and then on the bottom is just info. Okay, and getting a look at the sculpt, paint, and detail on this figure. It's a little hit or miss. I think the sculpt is fantastic, and I think the colors are kind of perfect. I really like them, but what's lacking for me is a consistency and a tightness and crispness of the paint job. The blue and the red seem fine to me. Like, it seems really nice. It's the black applications that are kind of sloppy and weird. My other head had a huge glob above an eye, and I'll show you that after. I kind of scraped it off, but for the most part, like, there's slop. You can see under the back of his chin right there. It's sloppy. You know, it's caked on kind of around the neck there. There's like just less of it on the arm. So, you know, there's almost places where there's no paint in the webbing, and on the hands as well. But I do really love the color of that blue, and I do love the color of that red, especially how that red looks with that black wash on there. Because, you know, that's not just red, that's red with a black wash over the top of it. There's a little bit inconsistent though, like, so if you look at the stomach, and I'm going to brighten it up just a little bit here. If you look at the stomach, you can see that it's like darker out here. It's almost like they didn't even bother moving it. They just kind of did the wash and it didn't catch underneath there. The emblem, you know, it's nicely sculpted, but it might not be quite as tightly painted as I would hope. You know, like around the edges of the eyes, you can see it can get a little messy. So, you know, when you're spending $80 for a figure, you kind of expect it to be super crisp and tight. I do like the sculpt and shape of the logo, and I really like how the muscles look, especially with this metallic blue paint. It really brings out the accentuates the sculpt on those muscles. So really cool looking figure. And really, when you kind of get down to it and you kind of look at it under some more natural light, just looks really nice. And I can kind of overlook some of those sloppy applications because the overall effect and the fun of this figure is really nice. And getting into a couple size comparisons, let's take a look at Spider-Man next to some other figures. Starting off with a couple other Spider-Man, we have the other MAFEX. This is from the Amazing Spider-Man 2 movie. And then we have the Medicom 112 Collective Classic Spider-Man. And you can see he's a little smaller than the Medicom and about the same size as the movie MAFEX. But, you know, the proportions are just a lot different on that one. This is a really cool figure, and it came with like a million things. So if you can get your hands on the deluxe Amazing Spider-Man 2 Spider-Man, go for it, because the figure's a little loose. It's like ragdoll kind of, but it comes with like a ton of stuff, and I'm pretty sure you can probably get a pretty good price on it. Probably a lot less than this one. And then here he is next to the Medicom 112 Collective Homemade Suit Spider-Man from Homecoming. And finally next to the SH Figuarts Infinity War Hulk, customized to look like a classic Hulk, and the classic Medicom 112 Collective Iron Man. taking a look at all of the accessories he comes with, this guy is actually pretty loaded with stuff. You can start over here and see that it's got an adapter piece and then a wide shot so that you can kind of like peg it onto the flight stand and sort of have it mock shooting out. And then you've got a swinging piece here. You have 2 long shots and then 2 short shots, and then you have an unmasked mask that you can have him holding in his hand. And he's got a bunch of sets of hands. So these are web grabbing hands, 2 web shooting hands, 2 relaxed hands, 2 spread hands, and then he's got 2 hands with magnets on them, and then 2 feet with magnets on them as well. And then he's got 2 head sculpts. We'll get to those in just a minute. And the flight stand, which is such a nice thing that all the MAFEX figures come with, really nice. So he's pretty loaded with accessories, and let's take a look at these heads. So the other masked head is basically a little more squinted. The eyes are slightly smaller, and mine had a glob of paint, and you can see where I scraped it off. It's right here. You can kind of see it's still a little messy where I scraped it off, but it was like a solid black just glob of paint that I had to scrape off. And just so you can see the 2 heads side by side and see the difference between the eyes, you can see the wider-eyed version and then the almost more aggressive or sort of squinty-eyed version. When you want to put the unmasked head on, you pop the whole neck out. It's very easy. All the joints are nice and things pop out very nicely. And then you just pop the other head back on, and you can get a look at this head sculpt here. Peter Parker unmasked head sculpt. It's decent. I like it. It's, it's not teenager Peter Parker. It's like an adult kind of looking Peter Parker, a little more square jaw, a little bit of a smirk on his face. So yeah, it captures him pretty well, I think. The lighting's probably not doing it justice. It's probably a little washed out if I turn the lighting down maybe. But it's a little shiny, a little, a little cartoony. But it's a comic book version, so that seems very fitting for it. Okay, and finally for the articulation, this is where this figure is so much fun. It almost reminds me, it doesn't have the same type of articulation, but how much fun it is to pose. And it has quite a wide range of articulation. It almost reminds me of the synthetic human from 1,000 Toys, in that it's just so much fun to play with. It's just a fun figure, and you can't factor that out when you're thinking about, like, is this premium, is the paint perfect, like all that stuff. But when it comes down to it, this is an absolute joy to just play around with. So the head can look up incredibly far, and you're going to get a little bit of a gap there, but for the most part, the gaps aren't too bad on this, which is, again, another thing that sort of reminds me of that synthetic human. But that's incredible how far up it can go. And it can go down this far. Just a lot of range of motion. I think the upward head motion is due to the fact that there's like there's almost a curve. The peg is curved back. Like there's a bend in the peg there. So I think that helps with the looking up. And so, yeah, so lots of just side to side, so expressive. You can get tons of movement in this head on this figure. It's got a really extreme butterfly joint that comes all the way across, and luckily the paint is pretty good across there. So, it continues the paint and sculpt as you go through and move it around, but like a really nice range of motion in those butterfly joints. You can get some really cool pictures, posing him in like comic book covers with extreme poses and stuff. And then, so the arm can, rotate all the way around. It can come up. I mean, it's just, the range of motion is just incredible. It's what you really want when you get a Spider-Man figure. And so they really nailed it. There's a bicep swivel up top. The elbows can bend, double jointed elbows. I mean, he can touch his shoulders with his hand. Incredible. My one complaint about the elbows is that his arms won't go straight. And when I want to do like a web shooting pose, like I want to put his arm out and I want that elbow straight, and that hand down, but it just can't, his arm just can't go straight. So that's kind of a bummer. It's kind of a weak part. Like, how hard is it to make his arm go straight when you're designing a figure? I don't know, but it would have been nice. And then as for the wrists, there's a nice range of motion there. It can swivel all the way around and hinge. You are going to see the ball joint, but that's sometimes a sacrifice you got to make if you want that super articulation. Okay, so into like the chest articulation, he can, between the waist and the chest, he can crunch forward that far. And same thing, you can go back way far. You're going to get some weird gappage there and this little ledge, so to speak, like right there. It looks a little weird, but you know, from the back, a pose like that will look really cool. And then, okay, so he can go sideways that far, and he can twist as much as he wants at the waist and at the top. So really nice range of motion in the upper body, in the arms and the torso. And then in the legs, so I have leg joints that kind of pop out, so it can be a little tricky. They pop out fairly easy, which is, you know, it can be nice because it means it's not going to go past a certain range. It'll just pop out, but it'll swing down this far so that when you want him to kick forward, he can go like all the way up like that, you know, and basically kick up all the way. And, you know, his leg's kicking out to the side. The further up you get it, the more it's kicking out to the side, but you know, quite impressive kick forward, especially with that drop down. So he won't go back very far, which I don't know that I really need him to, but then you can drop him down and have him do the splits. You can go splits that far, and his knees will bend up pretty much all the way, and then the ankle can rock pretty much 90 degrees. It's kind of ridiculous. And then outwards, not as much because there's a little piece right there that keeps that articulation from going all the way to that side. Going front to back, it'll hinge down this far and hinge up like this, and you have a toe articulation joint there as well. So yeah, the articulation is really impressive on this thing, and it's a lot of fun, and the joints are nice and smooth, but they're not loose like my other MAFEX Spider-Man. On that thing, they're crazy loose. That thing flops around like a rag doll, but this one, it holds its pose really well, which is important. And, you know, it's just a lot of fun to pose and try to get it into like some cool positions, like real Spidey positions that can go really extreme with things. You know, like the leg kicking all the way up, swinging out, just lots of fun stuff going on with this figure and how you can pose it. So just fantastic figure. I just think, you know, if this line were $50 instead of $80, I'd feel like, you know, like if it was the same price as SH Figuarts, I would feel like it's in that sweet spot. I do think it might be slightly overpriced at $80, but when it comes down to it, I'm really enjoying this figure. It's just a lot of fun. I have seen that it's selling out places, so I don't know. Like if you're going to get one, I would try to secure one soon. So, you know, that $80 price point might not even matter at this point because it might just be one of those figures that stays hard to find. I don't know. But I do know that MAFEX has done reissues quite a bit in the past. They've done improvements to figures. They've done straight reissues. So like version 2s, but regular reissues as well. So if this thing becomes really hard to find, I wouldn't go trying to spend $100+ on it. I would just wait and hope that they do a reissue on it. So thanks for watching my video. Please check out my other videos, like my review of the Mezco 112 Collective Black Panther. And until next time, may the Force be with you. DorkLair!